You see, like,
All right, I think we're good. Yeah.
All right, apologies for the delay, and would like to call this meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. First item I'd like to attend to, which isn't on the agenda, two introductions. At this table in the orange vest, Mitch Berkowitz is helping us out with some organizational efforts and improvements over the next few months. And Mitch comes to us with a long set of experiences in the world of town administration and small town civic affairs. We're glad to have him here. And secondly, our new town clerk is sitting in the back taking notes, wondering what she got herself into. Krista Hayward. Most of you know Krista and Neil, but welcome. All right. Moving on. Any public comments for items not on the agenda for discussion, not action? Okay.
I have a question about where we stand with PFAS and PFAS remediation and source identification. Not only for the school and for the rec, which we know about, but what are the other places that we don't know about?
Okay. Thank you, Pam. All right, any others? Okay, moving along. We're gonna mostly bypass town reports at this point. With the transition we've just had. We'll talk later in the meeting about the budget schedule, and passed out a copy of the budget schedule to everybody on the board tonight. So we can talk about that, put that down toward the end. So moving to the next item, regular business 24001. So I think the way I'd like to do this, if the board agrees, is to vote on these appointments. And if the votes are positive, then the actual swearing in will take place by the clerk at the office tomorrow. That's okay with everybody? As opposed to taking time to swearing in tonight. So we entertain a motion on item 24001 with the amendment of adding road commissioner to the list of duties. Carol?
Administrator. General assistant administrator, tax collector, treasurer, diamond. Contract inside.
And did you want to add road commissioner?
Oh.
Is there a second? Second by John. Discussion? Yep. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Unanimous. All right. Item 24002. We have a motion. Carol. Okay, second. Second by Mark. Discussion. Mark, welcome. Other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. You. And item 24004 to appoint Christine Offant. Is there a motion? Carol? Second. Discussion. Carol? Thank you so much. All right, other discussion? All in favor? All right. Item 24-005, to respond to John Whitaker's communication regarding the prior land swap and take any necessary action. There's an item in the packet that includes an email from John with prior email between John and Bo, with a copy to town administrator, a few members, I guess, of the Brunel family. We discussed this briefly several weeks ago. One of the items I remember from that discussion was suggesting that they might consider talking to a certified wetlands analyst who also did septic design. I think it may have been pointed out that that might have been out of my purview to make that recommendation. In this letter, Mr. Whitaker points out that Dave Chapman was their second opinion. They had had a person look at the land before. It was Hope Hampton Associates. Somebody knew this professionally. So, board have any comments or conversations about this letter from Mr. Whitaker? Any recommendations on how we reply?
I was hoping to have a conversation with Bo today about how he had ended the conversation so far with this individual and family, but I was unable to do that. It feels to me like the town has to take some responsibility here. I understand that it's easy to say that the individuals who wanted the piece of land or negotiated with the town for the piece of land should have done their own due diligence and had soil engineer work done before that. But it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel right to just say, well, you know, we swapped it with you. It's not prepping for a regular style septic system, so I guess you'll have to consider looking into a wetlands design, which is going to cost, you know, likely 5 times better what a regular system would cost, or at least 2 or 3 times more. So I'm not sure if we should consider this land swap a done deal. It's just how do we solve it? I don't know. Maybe we have some conversations, and maybe the town and the individuals look at the actuals and redesign the lot a little bit, split the cost, or maybe we split the cost on helping them find out if they can put in a different type of system. I just don't know, but it doesn't feel quite right. That's the only thing.
Other comments? Carol?
Or that's all. Probably. Would be good to hear from. I kind of agree with Mark, and I don't. If the presumption was that it was going to be over the lot.
I feel the same. I don't know enough about the backstory of this to make any comments on it.
So isn't a land transaction, didn't this have to go through town meeting?
Yes, that had to be okay. I was not privy to any of the conversation, to be quite honest. But anytime that we make a recommendation to part with taxpayer on property or anything that the taxpayers own over a value of $10,000 has to go through town meeting.
So any reapportionment of land or any offering of a financial arrangement on a septic system would also have to go through town meeting. Any recommendations from the board? Mark?
I would be glad to be one of the two select persons to sit down with the individuals at some point to talk about where things are at. What are the possible directions to look at, helping to mitigate or improve the situation. And I do think that some conversation with, I believe it, Jay Corson and Bo are probably the two select persons, past select persons that were part of this, negotiation and recommendations. Town is probably valuable, so I would be glad to help participate in those conversations if the board wants me to.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd be willing to. Talk to them. Well,
I think it would be great to get something in writing from Jay and Bo with their recollection of conversations. You can get that. That would be a good document to have as part of this process. And ideally to have that, some summary from them in writing before we enter into conversations with the property owner, Mr. Whitaker, and his relatives would seem to be a good approach.
Sounds reasonable to me. I may be having a conversation with Bo tomorrow. Just so everyone knows, after that, if we think we should have a conversation also with Jay Corson, I will let you know that, so that everything's transparent.
Okay. Nice. Other comments? Any comments from the public on this topic? So I'm going to put this down as a future agenda item, so we'll come back to it after we get that information. Okay. Make sense? Okay. All right, moving on. Back to the next thought. The item, I'd like to change this one slightly. When we wrote the agenda, this one was called to have the first reading of the draft code of conduct, take any necessary action. And since then, there have been a few comments from the board, but I think it might be best if we discussed as a board what direction we want to take for a draft code of conduct. And I think originally this was intended to be a code of conduct for the board. I think some of the samples that we garnered from other towns went different directions. Some of them were code of conduct for all public officials. Some of them involved code of conduct between staff and public officials. So what's the sense of the board for how we want to move forward with this? To summarize, just for the benefit of the public, we've gathered, with Mitch's help, 10 or 12, maybe 14 related documents from towns under 3,000 people, just looking to glean the best that's out there, as well as information from Maine Municipal on codifying how we communicate with each other, how we work with each other. So, comments from the board? Carol?
So looking for towns. It's listed as boards, commissions, and standard of conduct. And so I do think it should be across the board. I think it should be all, all of us, all of our business. So I think that, and I originally thought it was just that boards, but for a large group. So I think it should be applicable to. And then, I think one thing is it wasn't included in the packet as far as I know. So I think we have to give the public an opportunity to see it in the other boards passed so that they can
Very much so.
it's not just about us. And I did notice that all of where I'm working right now, they combine there's a single document called code of ethics, code of conduct policy, just an option. And then we also have on the agenda communication policy and I'm not sure we need. all. It seems like we can make compliance. And I think, I understand now, thanks to Mitch, code of ethics is sort of the parameters of which we operate. Two different things. Important to understand. The one that we have, one of the ones that, I guess, the one that was sent us is pretty, like, it sort of goes through how the administration organized. So it seems very much oriented towards sort of the town administrator and select, not so much large. That's those are my thoughts.
So one point that you made in terms of future direction would be to include appropriate documents in the next packet for the benefit of the public. Would that include the various samples that we've pulled together? To put all of those samples out there as examples? Okay, so then how would we as a board come up with a first draft? Would we co-write it? Would one of us volunteer to put together a draft and we all look at it? What would be the best way to pursue that?
I'm terrible.
Someone here the one that was you met.
That was Vika.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think Mitch came up with some examples and put a couple of comments into one, and then Vika did some more work on it. Mark,
Yeah, I have a question of Vika.
please. Yes.
Are you of the opinion that that first draft is lengthy? But for our needs? The only reason I'm asking, I tend to lean towards leaner, meaner, shorter, easy to understand documents and rules and regulations myself. That's just me. But it won't matter after June, I won't be sitting here. But I think most people prefer not page after page after page, so that's the basis of the question. Do you think we can streamline something and get it so it does lay out that's expected code of conduct and ethics and possibly even communication?
I'll answer for myself. I think introducing the ethics and conduct is that there can be a marriage here. Can you shorten it? What would you pull out of there? And what are the expectations when you're gone of the next group and the next group and the next group?
Yeah.
I think communications is important. It may be a standalone. And you're right, but as you can see, government is no longer a one-page operation. It seems to be more and more coming on to help guide the democratic process of governance.
Okay. And just one more follow-up. You feel that this is your first draft of a recommendation, Vika, in your opinion, if I may?
So what you have in front of you is a sample from another town. And anything in red was what I added, and the basics of that was just really changing it to administrator versus manager or select board versus selectmen. So this really kind of, I think the whole premise was to see an example with the town name on it, and then you can change it how it best would fit this community. So I think this is, you know, the best draft because it can get for first draft, absolutely.
Josh, you turn. So I don't think we should write it. I think we should take the examples we've got and have Mitch kind of give his opinion on what would be good for us. And then after there's a a draft that you guys, or you feel is good. Then send it to us and then we can go over it and talk about it and say, agree with this, disagree. But I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I can write a code of ethics. Or know, what we should have. I think that should be non-biased. Right, but, anyway.
And Carol,
So I guess the difference that I see with the one that we have, that we were. I think that's a decision we should make. Is, are we talking just about, and the one that we have also includes the statement of duties, which I have not seen in some of the other ones. So a lot of them are just code of conduct, don't include statement of duties. I think the statement of duties is valuable, but I don't know, I mean, I don't know if this is where it has to be, but those are the kind of, so when I looked at a bunch of them, the things that I noticed are, that some communities just apply them to every committee that operates in the community, you know, anybody working on behalf of the town. And it covers things like, you know, not having a financial interest in the outcome of something. And sort of that's understandable, but also kind of, you know, on the code of conduct, kind of behavior in meetings and not having ex parte conversations, that sort of thing. And so I think those are the kind of big decisions before we even decide, you know, where to go. So do you want it to just apply to the select board and town administrator, or do you want it to be more global? And then if you want it to be more global, then these are, you know, I'm not sure they can.
I would add this to that set of comments. All of these documents, I would suggest, need to be looked at in the context of the rest of the documents for that town. And as an example, some of the additional items that you just referred to, like the statement of responsibilities, those things are by and large covered in our ordinances for our town. Our select board ordinance enumerates our duties. Our planning board ordinance enumerates their duties. So we need to think about what it is we're trying to accomplish and how that relates to our other documents, policies, and ordinances. And as we look at these examples, we need to, I think, remind ourselves that those also have to be looked at in the context of their town documents. So I would add one more comment. When I first spoke with one of the towns I called, Vinyl Haven, she was Marjorie. She told me that they don't have a code of conduct for their boards. They rely on the very clear statements regarding conduct that are contained in the handbook of Maine Municipal. When they have a question, that's where they go for their authority. So just one more variable in the conversation. But I think, Carol, you were asking Mitch a question before I interrupted.
And again, I was speaking to myself, working backwards. I don't disagree. You need to go to the statutes to understand the authority that you have to make decisions, not in question. Conduct is how you will conduct yourselves in that decision-making process that guides you to get to the end product. I don't have a problem working more or less on that, but I wanted your fingerprints on it because you have to live with it. And to that extent, if I can be helped, I won't volunteer because you're moving into a budget system and season that probably take a little bit of time. I don't have a problem doing something if you want to cross out, add in. I'll be glad to redo that on my computer and send it over to you. But ultimately, it's what you're saying as a group of elected officials, but you're also going to spread it to the individuals who serve on your committees. Because they do represent the community, the values of that community, and the expectations that whatever decision is coming out is a good decision for that particular issue. And you're right, pecuniary interest, You want to avoid those conflicts altogether. In any community, that's not an acceptable way to behave.
So in a couple of these, I just like the plain language. That some of the other communities use, I think it's a little more accessible. And then I noticed, I think it was North Carolina, section on harassment based on gender race. I think that is something worthwhile to include that I didn't see. So I would be happy to make a stab at a vision and send it out to Mitchell. I think personally, I would like to see a more global content that applies to all parties. Doing the town business, not just the town administrator. But that's fine.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the code of conduct, and I think it should apply to the board and every other point of board in the town. As far as the list of duties, that doesn't have to be in this document. It's already in the ordinance, and starting in the select board ordinance specifically for this board. And as far as a communication policy, it could probably should be a separate small document. It's very short and sweet. You know, you can't have more than 2 select persons in one place talking about town business. You should already know that. You can't send an email that sounds like you're talking about town business, so on and so forth. So it's probably 2 separate documents, and I think the ethics and code should be.
Was the board okay with Carol taking a stab at drafting the document that then be shared, get help from Mitch, then be shared with Vika and 5 of us? Okay, good. Thank you, Carol. All good? Comments from the public?
Well, this is rather obscure to the people in the public. Will all these different documents you gathered from other towns be somewhere people can read them if they wanted to?
Certainly,
Like in the office.
they're all public record.
Or
If I could gather all of them, post them all on the website under the this meetings.
you need to follow the town office. That'd be good. Yeah, just want to see what's going on.
Jeremy, right?
Yes, sir.
Your point is well taken. I think you're gonna see a lot of overlap. And it's similarity. Don't be surprised if it's redundant town after town to the nucleus. But some of it is tailored to a particular town or another. That may be something that's important to you as well.
And I would add to that, at least 3 of them, in good, easy to understand language, spoke to what I think has been a rather recent trend, which is the increasing occurrence of anger and vitriol in public meetings. So it's some of them talk about not just the behavior of the board and the staff, but also the expectations of behavior of the public in these meetings. And if things get out of hand, what's done about that. So, but you'll see that in some of the examples. We'll see whether or not that makes it into any drafts we might come up with. But I don't think we've had a big problem with that. I think we've had a few examples where things got a little out of hand. I think the ethic on Shebig has always been town meeting. We can disagree like cats and dogs, and then we walk out the door and have a cup of coffee together and chat. I hope we can keep that going. Yes, sir.
And I agree. I don't think it's been a big problem. But there are some areas where they will teach small levels of conflict resolution at the municipal.
Yep. All right, we good with that? Thank you, Carol. All right, moving on, item 2407. With the conversation we just had, do we need to talk about the communication policy at this time, or put that aside for now? Carol.
I would suggest people have confidence. Distribute that to the board and work to make it evidence. My goal would be.
So when you say if people, you mean Board, public, staff, board, okay. Okay. Yep, yep. Okay. All right. Item 24008, just a small thing, but more of a budget control thing than anything else. For the board and staff, as we work with Mitch, obviously everybody on the board is empowered to call Mitch and chat about whatever you want to. But if we're going to ask him to do things that are specific assignments, please run that through the chair so we can keep control of that line item, that budget. And comments, questions? Mark?
First of all, I had a very good one-on-one with Mitch, which I will not go into detail about, but it was very valuable for me. I'm glad that he's here. I'm glad that he's engaged in services. And with regards to specifically what you're suggesting, Bob, I completely agree. I think I may have jumped the gun a whisker suggesting that Mitch consider, and that is how I worded it, talking to two or three very experienced early on select board members, the town clerk, the original town clerk, and an existing planning board chairperson. The reason I made that suggestion is I still think that there could be some value in those conversations. Not so much about how badly things have gone, but a lot of good experience from all four of those individuals, in my opinion, the 5 minutes.
Is that a motion?
When we get specific,
Yeah.
with names included.
No, yeah, I think you say the 3 or 4 names that you.
Okay.
mentioned, yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Mitch Berkowitz to have conversations with 2 former select board members, former town clerk and planning board chairperson as his time is available.
Second? Second. Josh, okay, discussion on the board? All in favor? All right, thank you, Mark. Okay, moving on, 24009. To review the memo of understanding between the town of Shabig Island and the Shabig Recreation Center and take any necessary action. I believe that was in the packet, that MOU was in the packet, is that correct? Carol, I think this was an item of interest to you. Do you have any comments to open with? Right, no. Put it on the agenda because it had been mentioned as a future agenda item. I guess the question is, that's a different item. I thought the MOU was in the packet. Is the MOU not? Okay. So this had been suggested by the board to be on an agenda item. This is a memo of understanding that was written between the board and the rec center several years ago. Is there interest in meeting with the rec to decide to go further with that discussion? What's the sense of the board, Carol?
You're looking at me right now.
Right. Go ahead, Steve.
Copy of this MOU that I signed on 7/31 of 2019. And the current president at that time also signed it. That is to the right of the agreement. To the left of the agreement, there's board of selectmen listed, names listed, and spaces for them to sign. Do you have a signed copy from the town, of the board of selectmen at that time?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, so yours has their signature, what date, could I ask, did they sign that document?
Within a month of when you signed it,
Okay,
It's
great,
a month before, actually.
okay, all right, thank you very much.
Yep.
Because my email records was a copy from Marjorie, and I
Right.
couldn't find that it was ever forwarded to actual signatures. So I was never, to be quite honest, I was never sure that that current select board even signed it.
Right, it, looks like Jonna and Steve signed it on July 31 of 2019. And, Herb, Jay, Mark, and David signed it on August 28th of 2019.
So, I don't know. I believe maybe we have said to put this on the agenda to get it on the radar, then we requires this reporting. February.
That be relative to budgets? Yeah, okay. Okay. Then-
Can I just ask for a point?
Sure,
of
go ahead, yeah.
So, my understanding, and I won't, on this one cycle, but last February, as president, we came together with a budget workshop, and we had submitted ahead of that our budget and how funds were used to benefit the community, since it's not a municipal center. And so I'm just curious, would this just be getting that same thing to you earlier, or are you asking for something different here?
Well, what's in the MOU?
Very similar to what we
There's
divided.
a promise law state that balance.
Yeah, so, yeah, for the most part, everything I was documents to my house. Which those are normal documents. P and L. Yeah, statement back. We didn't have any, right, we didn't have it all at the time, wasn't kept plan at the time, but we're getting better at these documents, so I would say that these are not a problem for us.
Happy to.
The MAU as written is not a problem.
Great.
We can provide it.
We can get them to you tomorrow. Go on.
We could definitely. Not say it's not.
Before the, well in advance of the budget workshop on February 24th would be sufficient for the current budget schedule. And then relative to the MOU, think the timing, February 1st. Yep. So yeah, if you can get it to us by February 1st, that would give us plenty of time to read through it. We may have a further discussion on the board about the nature of the documents that we'd like to see from nonprofits. One observation is that each nonprofit brings their own documents to the conversation. Some of them were budgets, some of them were something like a P&L statement, but there was no standardization. It became a little difficult to take a standard approach given that. So we may be talking about that as a board, but for now, you can just think about those things that are listed in the MOU by February 1st, which would give us plenty of time to look it over before the conversation on February 20th.
Thank
you. Yep.
And the rest of them is also looking at the exact same issues that you just brought about. We're going for gap accounting, and everything that we focus in on our gap standards and that's the focus. So we'll get clearer to that.
Okay.
And hopefully that will be the standard.
Okay, Mark.
If you could ask just a couple of questions that are really about budget expectations.
Sure. Yep.
Steve, and if I may, is the kid place completely under the umbrella of the rec center?
Yes, we have separated it as a separate, a whole, it's owned by the rec center. We're operating it as a separate operating unit. So we are providing its own budget, its place, and its own revenue sources and its own budget, but it falls under our master budget.
Okay. And will the request for, contribution from the taxpayer be an amount for the rec center and a separate amount for the kids' club?
It's great, question. Everything under that program, since Kids Place is it is a program at the rec center. It's classed as a multi class, as under GAP standard classes. It's restricted funds, so all the revenue and the expenses for Kids Place is listed as a restricted fund under the umbrella of the rec center.
Yeah.
So all monies, if a donor says that they're earmarking funds for the Kids Place, if they request it, that is classed as a restricted fund and it gets monitored that way. We currently now have separate bank accounts for Kids Place and the rec center under that its own operating structure.
Yeah.
So, so we would be asking for funds for both, the Kids Place and for the rec center.
Yeah, last year you asked for 59,000, I believe.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's what we can expect this year?
Yes, we have two.
I'm not asking.
Yeah. Yes, that's the structure. We are concerned about the conversations we've had in school, and then we're also concerned about our water situation. Because we need some clarity that the well, whose water is it, and we're paying a lot of money to have that. We've already put in $10,000 PFAS, and it looks like we're gonna have to put in an additional $10,000 sanitation system, like the school has to. So we're just concerned as far as that, and there's some concern as far as the rep being responsible for the media filtration of the water that goes out to the field, which isn't in our control. Well, we don't control the field, but yeah, we're providing the water and the filtration of that water. And so we would hope that we can bring up some conversation with the town.
Okay, let's hold those conversations before we get into it.
Yeah, that's more budgetary.
I wasn't asking. Thank you for your.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Steve. Right. Okay. Pam.
What is the lesson here? And I think the lesson is that the communication was incomplete to the rec. That when the contract or the MOU was signed, they didn't get a signed copy of it. So it's just, I think it's a really good learning opportunity about what comes out of a minor miscommunication of that.
Okay. I guess I would point out that we don't know that the rec didn't get a signed copy. Steve found it in his email.
Correct. I don't have a copy of it. Again, that I can't, I wouldn't be able to swear on the Bible that we didn't get it.
Yeah.
I couldn't look.
That's fine. That's fine. But thank you, Ben. And does that finish up our conversation on the MOU for this point in time? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Jen. 24010. School committee has asked for select board involvement in a meeting with CTC regarding budget. And they've made the point that there's a lot of similarity in the kinds of expenditures that the town makes with CTC compared to what the school makes with CTC. And I was expecting to get an email update as to when that meeting might be scheduled. I don't know if I've received that yet, but what's the sense of the board? In what way, if any, does the board want to have one or two board members or the entire board participate in a conversation with the school and CTC about budget?
Did we talk about it last time with them coming here?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I thought we did. We said we thought it would be better for them to come here and talk to the board, but
So the school and CTC. CTC's, but we typically have people, nonprofits, come talk to us in budget season. I'm obviously missing the conversation you guys are talking about.
Last.
Please.
select board. There is a committee made up of the select board and student class. If you have or some concerns, but I think first conversation. Is that, you guys?
That's.
Were you done?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, that's how I remember it, Bob. I think our thinking was, even though I wouldn't mind being assigned to go have a conversation with a goal for that conversation and some guidance to how to carry that conversation on and report back. I think it's probably better for us to have the school come to one of our meetings, talk about specifics, decide whether both elected entities have some similar reasons for sitting down with the transportation company, and then go from there.
Okay,
In other words, are we confident that we feel we should vote as a town and school, which is taxpayers funded, go talk with our main transportation system about some concerns and questions.
okay, so I guess, when we talked about future agenda items, I must have missed that one, I didn't get that on future agenda items. So the board's permission, I can, reach out to the chair of the school committee and suggest that they come, well, we'll put it on our discussion for future agenda items.
Well, people, they want.
Yes, Beacon.
So in these notes, Elizabeth states that they'll be having a discussion about this on January 9th at their meeting. I'm happy to attend that meeting to see how the discussion takes on with the school board. And then maybe we can coordinate a meeting, a couple members afterwards, but it seems like they're gonna start this discussion to then have an idea of what they'll bring forward.
The sense that I had was that the conversation that happened when we meet with the school committee well down the line is when things are pretty baked. They're looking at renegotiating, sounded to me like they're looking at renegotiating the CTC early on so that they know what to bake into their budget, which would then get discussed with us at that later time. So I'm not sure that pushing it off to that later time accomplishes what they're trying to accomplish. So, Mark.
Yeah, and without sounding insensitive, which I can possibly sometimes, I understand where they're coming from. But unfortunately, their budget is their territory, and our budget is our territory. And then it combines at the end for town meeting to consider or not to approve. My point being, unless the select board decides that along with the school board, we have some real amount policy of our main transportation carrier. I'm not sure we should be joining in as the big brother, big sister to try to convince CTC what they should be charging, unless that's how we feel by majority as an entity. In other words, the select board feels that, these policies and amounts for services back to the taxpayer in need of renegotiation and discussion, and the school board thinks that they have a specific, I think it's kind of separate, a little separate to me, but maybe I'm missing something.
Thank you. Carol, you had your hand up?
Well,
No. I attended a sub meeting of the school committee talking about rec center stuff.
but then, there's an email to you, Elizabeth.
Correct.
the school committee chair, which.
December 29th, that one? Yeah.
Gives me the sense. But again. I mean, I think I get the gist of what the concerns are. I'm not clear on what we can do. Just follow up. So, that would.
So that would be your suggestion, that if they would like to talk about this with the board, that they come to, that we put it on the agenda.
Or means that, where it's called the formal workshop.
That sense of the board that we suggest that. They could come here, or even better, a workshop. Or just say workshop.
Part of that, details.
No, so the workshop would be the school committee and
Select
select board, not CTC. Okay, thank you very much. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. All right. Okay, and the item that we moved down to the bottom of the schedule would be the next item here, the budget schedule. So in December, the budget schedule got pushed off the calendar. So we got things rolling back in the right direction. And Vika put together, is this the same budget schedule? The same budget schedule we have before? Okay. And the one difference, the first item that's shown, which is for tonight, is to discuss the budget goals and priorities, but we did that December 20th. So Chris is going to go back to the recording and record the details of what we talked about, which didn't make it onto the minutes. So the next then item on the schedule would be a first draft of the budget presented and a discussion of capital expenditures at 6 p.m. on January 17th. That would be an entire meeting. Is that what we want to do on January 17th in order to maintain the schedule that's in front of us as a budget schedule? And I understand we just got this. But...
I don't have a big.
Mark.
Maybe something we could accomplish. I'm just wondering if the newly formed finance committee is going to be part of this and have any of the first glance at the capital situation done by that. That's my question. That's my thinking. That's what I'm not sure of. I haven't had a conversation with anyone from the finance committee. Has anyone else? Well, I'm sure you know that. Right. Okay. Is it possible then that we could, as one of our agenda items on the 17th, look at our first draft of a budget proposal and just look it over, have it be part of the packet, and begin the process? Carol.
Based on what I could see in Trio, no prep work for the budget process has been put in the system.
So could, by packet time for the meeting of the 17th, could we have a first draft of the budget with the 2 prior years and the current year to date and a proposed budget? Is that possible?
It's possible. I'll provide you a document, but it'll be, the expected expenditures for fiscal year 25 will be a draft. It'll be kind of bases off the average of the previous years, but yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then there are a couple of big items we'll want to pay attention to, as opposed to going through every single little line for that first draft. If waste disposal, both barging, but in particular, the new contract that was, you just saw that document recently from
Yeah, so
provider.
what I would do is I would take any information that has come in today about changes, and I would incorporate those.
Yep.
And just, like I said, do a draft, kind of anticipate just what the average expenditure would be, or if we know, with new employees coming in, potential benefit changes, things like that. So, yeah, that would, it would be time consuming, but it wouldn't be anything that wouldn't be able to be done. That would be
Carol, you were gonna say something?
Well, I was wondering, once you get this, you get benefits increase, that's one.
the health benefit increase information we already have, we just, well, it should have already been received in the town. So, if it's not in the town, I already have that information. The county, we don't have that information yet. But in previous years, we kind of anticipate by using the information that we have and just keeping that there, just so that way it gives you a rough ballpark.
Yeah, working on this funky kind of year and a half.
Yeah, so we have, Cumberland County changed their, budget fiscal and calendar, so half a year is being paid out on a 5-year increment for the town. And so we're paying half of their year, so there's about $17,000 to $20,000 in addition that's being added to pay that off.
So, yeah, Mark,
Did you have something to say?
go ahead.
And I won't burden you any further, but with regard to the municipal solid waste increase and recycling charge increase that we're likely to be seeing as part of our operational budget with transfer station, Eco Main, do you think you'll be able to contact them and give us some guess of what that department may have to look like?
Well, the letter that the town received provides the change in costs and numbers, so
I
I
think you can come
think for the
close.
benefit of this meeting, I would take the average of the last 3 years and then take the average and incorporate the cost increase just to give a number to work off.
Thank you.
Sure. What I was gonna propose is that we add that half of what's currently shown on January 17th. And allocate 45 minutes of the meeting, maybe an hour of the meeting, to go through that first draft of the budget as we begin this process. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. All right. And moving on. Other business, any other business from the board that we've not talked about tonight? Carol, are you looking for something? Okay, moving on then to communications.
Contract extension for the GoFit grant, the finance committee grant, unbeknownst to us, they thought it was the end of the year, but a year from now, we should be plenty of time. Then we also did receive the fellow, supervisor, and we didn't get state to agree to let us go with plan pay for per cost. So that's good news. So okay, that's good. Then I did speak with DOT. There's a grant program. It's pretty broad. It's funds that I see, but it's through the Department of Transportation have to be enrolled in the state open program. We are. And so I think the grant is due in February, and I talked with them just before the holiday, and I think we should pursue looking for some funds. Your categories was construction supplies. It would be really great if tackle construction related project. I don't know if it's feasible, but I sent the information to Weston Sampson that I would get. I think we should close the opportunity, at least 50,000. And there's a small match, it's 5%. So I think we should try to do it. DOT is pretty encouraging.
Awesome.
I will take a stab at it by the next meeting. We should have a We're not eligible for any local grants right now, and we are got an extension on our whatever that one is. So here grant, so I'm not sure we're in a position to apply until we take that back.
Good. Other communications?
It's kind of I mean, it is a communication, but because I didn't have a chance, having started back into the position yesterday, to draft out a TA report, and this information is gonna be out, and the process will start taking place between now and the next meeting. Next week, the town is due to begin renovations at the town office. So there's gonna be some construction that's gonna be happening. So the town is gonna do their best to maintain the operations, as they typically would and be open 3 days a week. We do anticipate to have the front operating as usual. The back of the office is gonna be having some work done. If for some reason, they have to shut the power off or lose internet or something, people do best to try to, through text message or Facebook or website, communicate with public to make sure that they're aware, or try to make appointments. But just so that the public's aware, that is going to be starting up next week, and they say about 3 to 4 weeks. We're going to be planning for a good 4 to 5 weeks, on the shorter end. So if there are any disturbances, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Other communications? Public?
I suppose I can communicate.
Can you?
Oh, yeah. Right. Sorry. Very interesting, The private table that we bought last year sometime. Well, maybe 2 years ago, but it was lead time. Is now on the island in the public works yard, along with a container which I thought would be full of other material, but container self-contained. Material is going to come on the 11th, I think, and get put into the why does this make sense?
Okay.
But anyway, at that point, we'll have all the material except for the things that go in individual people's houses and the central office electronics. On the other, from our control, and somebody else's.
And thank you for the comic relief, but the container, I take it, is for in-process sort of storage of things.
The storage of all the stuff that you don't want to leave out,
Yeah.
boxes of bolts,
Makes sense.
slice containers, stuff like
Yep. Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your work on it. All right, seeing no more communications, moving on to approve the minutes from December 14 and December 20. Motion by Mark to approve both, second by Josh. Carol, comment? Yeah.
I think we should hold off on the 20th probably.
Approve it later.
Bring it back next time.
It's a pretty big item. Probably need to do
The 14th we can approve.
Fine with that, but
that. Okay, that'll be Josh. That change, so just on the 14th, all in favor? All right, and kick the 20th off to our next meeting. And items to be placed on a future agenda. We talked about PFAS, not just the school and the rec, but also the town, what sort of the overall situation with PFAS in the town should be. Put that on future agenda. And the next agenda will certainly include 45 minutes to an hour for the budget discussion that we just talked about. Then perhaps an update on the DOT grant at the next meeting. Other agenda items from the board? Mark?
I'm not gonna worry for now about getting the traffic ordinance thing back on the agenda. And quite frankly, after reading the section that George pointed out to us, it's already in our parking and traffic. We kind of almost already have the authority to enforce vehicle and items that are obstructing public ways in the town of Quebec. So I'm open to whether that actually needs to be amended with my possibly stronger language in there to allow us to remove or disable vehicles that are clearly interfering with safe passage in public ways in this town community. My reason for having it in there, putting it in there, wasn't just for one individual's activities, although that pushed me a little bit. I just wanted to talk about as a board and a community, you know, how important we feel or not keeping our roads clear.
Yeah, and there've been 3 or 4 examples in the past 6 months of where action did need to be taken. There was something at Bennett's, there was something up on South Road. Something down at Chandler's Wharf parking, I believe. Yeah, so I think it's important. I agree with you. We should consider what George pointed out and maybe circle back with a conversation to the sheriff's department about that. And,
Maybe.
I've got a long-term list of agenda items and short-term, it's still on there, on the long-term list. So.
Yeah, so I'm just pointing out that I'm not gonna request that tonight, because I think that we're starting to get into the budget season, and I think that should take priority always, especially capital budgeting. But, if we accomplish that before I get off the board, fine. If we don't, fine. I'll try not to come to meetings. Be annoying.
Yeah, right.
Order. Other agenda items to talk about? Carol, you had something?
Well.
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't.
The last comment we got from George was that the auditors had told him to be done by the middle of January. So you might want to follow up with them, see how they're doing, if you get a chance. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was middle, it got pushed out to the middle of January because of the storm.
Just,
Yeah. It was either the middle of January or actually the 15th, one of the two. I've got it on my calendar. So, but be good if you could reach out to them and see where they are. That'd be great. Okay. Others? All right. Would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? All right. Thank you all.